Hi, it's St Paul's Lifestyle here, Angus, Harry and Rose, and we're ironically making this podcast to put onto YouTube following the announcement that YouTube's going to remove music videos by artists such as Adele, Arctic Monkeys and Radiohead because the independent labels to which they belong have refused to agree terms with the site. And obviously this is something that is interesting, and I've been just digesting it and wanting to know what Angus and Harry think about it. The context of it is quite interesting actually, because it's relevant that YouTube seems to be sort of like in some way fighting back, because Amazon has launched a subscription service for its Prime members, its paying members, and Apple bought the online music service, which is Beats Music, and Harry's just going to have a quick look at that to see if Beats Music is a paying service. Because obviously my thinking is that if Amazon launched a similar service for its Prime members, does that mean that YouTube in this is seeking to in some way monetize the massive numbers of people that go onto its platform? Other things, of course, that are going to be really relevant for this as well are the fact that large numbers of people, like Facebook, have come onto YouTube following artists like Adele and Radiohead. I mean, Radiohead, their total number of online views on YouTube must be how many, Angus? Billions?
Maybe. Yeah, around that probably.
And if you added up the entire number of all the views and people who have come onto YouTube because of they've been following those artists that they're now threatening to pull.
I mean, there's something I'd like to add here, which is this isn't a new thing. This whole YouTube being against independent labels. This is just a hard crackdown on it, because ever since they have had Vevo, which is owned by Sony, I think, which is their music service, they've had like their sort of proper music channels, which are all the big bands on Vevo and smaller bands on Vevo that other labels pay to get onto the Vevo network, and then you've got independent artists on YouTube, and that's always been a bit of a grey area. They've been very strict with music in YouTube videos, and I feel like this is just an extension of that sort of whole little battle they've got, because obviously Vevo pays them a ridiculous amount of money.
Vevo pays who? YouTube.
I think it's that way.
Because Vevo is quite expensive, isn't it, to get on? We've had a look at that. Yeah. So you have to pay to get onto Vevo, and then Vevo has to pay YouTube. Is that right?
I think so. This whole Vevo basically, they're like, the strategy is that when it was set up is they wanted to take control of the music on YouTube. Basically, they wanted to have all of it.
Vevo wanted to.
And then they give the artists that have music videos, they host like on Vevo channels, and then they give, so like, I don't know, 3 Doors Down Vevo is one. So things like this, they have the lockdown on all of, for instance, 3 Doors Down music on YouTube. Vevo do. So all of these other copyright claims and stuff, and it is quite anti sort of artists, I would say, the service, but obviously it works a bit like being on a major label.
What Vevo does?
Yeah, because you're on the Vevo channel.
People subscribe to the Vevo, don't they?
Yeah,
and
they get
promotion of their videos.
Yeah. Vevo, if they probably do sorts of deals and stuff. I don't really know that much about them, but to get an artist big on YouTube, it's not that hard to do through Vevo, because
they've got so many subscribers.
Yeah, and they do control almost all of the big music on it. But obviously, any songs that aren't on the Vevo network, like for instance albums that were released independently that they don't want to put on there, are now coming under fire, because I think it's all trying to pressure people towards this Vevo thing.
Sony and Vivo, do they have any? YouTube and Vivo, do they have any overlapping ownership then?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't know enough about it. It's
Vevo is more of a channel on YouTube, is it not? I think, and
it is, but it's far deeper ingrained into YouTube. They have a big deal
right.
going on with them. I think it was founded by Sony, but also other labels have sort of obviously contribute towards it to get their music on the network. Like I said, I don't know enough about it, but Vevo is part of this whole movement towards getting people.
Because YouTube are making money from Vevo, aren't
they? I think is that
contract.
When artists get their stuff up on Vevo, they only get a fraction of what they would get from like views.
Yeah, whereas when you're independent,
they get all the money. It comes from the ad what's it called?
Revenue.
Whatever it's called, the AdSense.
So Vevo, right? Wikipedia says that Vevo is a video hosting service owned by a joint venture of Universal Music Group, Google, Sony, and Abu Dhabi Media. And I would reckon that Abu Dhabi is probably some kind of investor. So if we concentrate on the other three people, you've got Google, search engine.
Yeah, massive. Obviously.
Yeah.
Also on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that indicates to me. So if you've got Google owns YouTube, and Google is part of a joint venture.
Also, Google runs AdSense as well, don't they? Which also does all of the ads on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Right. Okay. Because everybody knows that Google is looking to monetize its search engine services.
Also, YouTube has probably, I don't know, because obviously they don't make this sort of stuff public, but ad blocker, which is a common thing these days, they used to block ads, it cuts any money that people make from YouTube videos, and it's come more and more over the past few years. It's come more and more to like the norm to have that on your computer. As they add more ads, more people find out about ad blocker. You get that. So I would imagine their income, even though it was only a few years ago they first actually had a profit off YouTube, I would have thought that had gone down considerably due to ad block usage.
Yeah. So the advertising revenue has gone down. You've got ownership of Vevo and YouTube shared by Google.
Yeah.
Right? We all know that Google is looking to increase its revenue for its services. So do you think it is possible that what YouTube is actually doing is part of an overall strategy of Google to develop income in the face of things like ad blocking? So if all the independent labels get forced into Vevo, they'll effectively have no option but to pay Vevo's rates, because as you've just said, they could generate advertising income directly from YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, YouTube doesn't want them anymore because they're not making enough money from them because of ad blocker. So if YouTube forces them all onto Vevo, they're going to get money in from Vevo for it, because the Vevo is more expensive, I think, which is better for Google. Could that be what's going on?
Yeah. I think it's quite a cynical point of view.
But this is going to be about money. This is not about what is best for the world.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's quite a cynical point of view because you're all talking like pushing people out. But if you just have to look at who owns Vevo to see what's going on here, really, which is these major labels who are all part of Vevo. They're getting an alright deal out of it because they're making money at both ends of it, off their artists who are already on Vevo and off Vevo itself. And then all of these independent people, they get the short end of the stick most of the time, but Vevo can be good for some bands. Especially Sam Duke.
Yeah.
He was talking about that band, I can't remember the name, who just exploded onto YouTube, and that's the sort of thing that Vevo want to capitalise on. And so obviously the major labels, because it gives them a much greater control of the situation if they're part of the governing YouTube body, basically.
Well, also, it would capture revenue in a way that YouTube is not capturing it.
Well, I mean, you can't tell without looking at the numbers, but I would imagine so.
Yeah.
But I would guess that Vevo, if you get all the indie stuff channeled into Vevo, so that YouTube has got better control over its content, then it's going to be easier for Google to control the income that is generating.
Also, anything through Vevo, because Vevo and YouTube have had ties for ages, it's going to have the knock-on effect of locking down a lot of YouTube videos in the past that have had, at the time, obviously permission to use various music, but because of the way that YouTube looks at these sorts of stuff, it can be quite brutal. So it's just, you used a snippet of this song, we're just going to ban it, and people getting strikes all over the place. It's...
I just feel like it's not a very positive move for the users, particularly. I feel they're alienating the bands themselves. I mean, they're pushing them to having to go to Vevo or get off YouTube completely, I feel. And having doing that, they might lose out because bands aren't willing to do that. So they might lose out, and then another same video streaming site may get benefits from that through just the way they want their money from it. Really, it's clear that that's their obligation in doing this. I feel.
Do you mean motivation? It's clear that's the motivation in doing this.
And they're just shooting themselves in the foot, really, in my opinion. Anyway.
I really agree with them that they're shooting themselves in the foot, because what's going to happen to YouTube if they don't have this? Because a lot of this music is absolutely fantastic. Just because it's not well known, it's no less good, a lot of it, than the stuff that is really well known.
You have to have enough money to go onto Vevo to do so.
You do, yeah.
And not all bands have that.
And recognition as well.
Yeah.
They don't just take...
They won't take it
out.
No.
Like a garage band or something.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the other thing that comes to mind, talking about what impact it's going to have, like you were saying, Harry, on the actual content of YouTube and the user's experience.
Yeah.
Angus was saying the other day how Reddit, which started out as being like a really high level integrity, fantastic forum, it's become infiltrated with a lot of users. The content has now become so changed that a lot of people aren't using it anymore, I've heard. That could effectively happen
similar
here.
To the way the Facebook's gone as well.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
The more people you get onto something like this, the larger the spectrum of people, and the more it sort of averages out to these people that don't really know a whole lot about anything. And you see that with YouTube as well. It's always on the front page. You just have like football, which it's not a bad thing, obviously, but things like football, number one hits music wise, always Vevo stuff.
Yeah.
Popular, like middle of the road YouTube commentators, big important newscasts and things like that, and it always
basically where they're making the money.
Yeah, it always averages out to the middle of the road when you've got a large user base, and that's obviously it's very beneficial for YouTube to have Vevo, because it controls that entire section of the music, because it's all most of their views are on the middle road stuff, like pop, like mainstream rock, a lot of this stuff, and it leaves nowhere for the small upcoming bands to go, which is a real issue here, I think. It's exactly what you said, and
to make a name for yourself is almost getting impossible on YouTube if they bring that out.
Yeah,
like that. And
that is where the really, really good news is, because there is absolutely no doubt at all that there is a need for an independent site now. And really, I think YouTube have shot themselves in the foot, because there are so many people like Radiohead and Adele who are going to support independence. It's only a matter of time. Surely they've just created one of the biggest business opportunities
Exactly.
in the
If
online
they move
history
somewhere else,
by
then
doing this.
their followers are going to go with them, aren't they?
As they did when they first went on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, full circle.
Yeah. Also, one more thing.
Mm.
You can't really forget that I would have thought the music, Universal and Sony would have had a huge part in pushing YouTube and Vivo, obviously using their influence in Vivo to push YouTube into pushing this sort of thing forward, because it's obviously it's better to have more control.
Well,
to have more space, less competition from independent labels and independent artists on YouTube.
very, very good point, actually. And on that point, they've probably already signed the agreement. So in the reports where we're reading that independent labels have refused to sign, but the major labels have signed. Of course, the major labels have signed because they own Vevo. That is directly going to benefit.
Yeah.
That's like, it's so annoying. The three major record labels, Universal, Sony and Warner, have all agreed terms with the site. Well, Universal and Sony co-own Vevo.
And I would have thought Abu Dhabi Media Group has something to do with Warner as well.
Yeah, no doubt. If we start digging.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what's going on then.
There is a positive though to come out of this. Is they did say that there was some sort of subscriber service, and they have said, YouTube have said that they're going to open up more commercial opportunities for artists. Now, this could mean a lot of things really, but YouTube tend to make good decisions with this sort of thing. So it's worth keeping track on how they develop this, because that does mean that even though the industry as a whole may suffer in the short term, especially the independent labels, the long term, it might be a good thing to provide a bigger revenue stream from the online.
Yeah.
From online stuff.
Well, yeah, if that's the way it's going to go. We'll see.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right.